Women over 35 often wonder why men their age aren't interested in them for relationships or marriage. The truth of the matter is that a 35-year-old man with a job, money, and a car can entice younger, more attractive women in their 20s. But the younger woman still in her prime will still look for the adrenaline rush with Chad and reject any worthy suitors, only to end up past the wall with regret. Here's the brutal reality that these young women will have to face in a couple of years when they're done with their Chads and Tyrones. The majority of women are not ready for the wall. Several women in their early 30s have successfully caught men's attention for over 20 years. The desire to date women in their prime has been and will continue to exist in males as young as their early 20s and as old as their 50s and 60s. Young ladies have received the attention they have always desired from men of all ages and social backgrounds who have shown them love and concern. Women are at their life's peak in their 20s, and that value for them starts to decline in their 20s. Men, however, reach their peak after their 30s and their worth continues to rise until their 50s. When a woman is in her 20s, she can often effortlessly draw the attention of men of any age. However, after the age of 30 to 35, when a woman's appearance begins to deteriorate, the attention of teenagers, 20-somethings, and even older men begins to wane as they begin to focus on younger women. Women frequently feel that older males don't treat them fairly. There is a steady increase in young guys being virgins under the age of 30, and this is worrying social scientists and young men alike. According to the Pareto principle, there is an 80-20 difference between men and women, which means that 100% of women want to date the top 20% of men. There have been numerous studies that have demonstrated this, the most recent of which was probably in 2020. However, there are numerous data sets that demonstrate that 80% of women or 80% of men are not appealing to women and men, respectively. Research has found that women are more fascinated by the top 20% of men according to the Pareto principle. I hope this also makes it clear what this 80-20 rule is, as it's being grossly misstated by RP coaches out there. I recently read some articles online and heard it in the news, as well as how fewer young people were being physically intimate. And I thought to myself, wow, this is something I never thought would happen. The article evaluated survey data from 12,000 adults aged 18 to 49 in 21 countries and found some surprising results. It found out that not all people like physical intimacy. Intimacy is difficult to find for young people, at least in part because many of them still live with their parents. Nearly half of persons ages 18 to 24 do not actively date. 30% have never been in a committed relationship, and 32% have never engaged in a casual affair. Their romantic lives are probably impacted by the fact that 55% of them reside with their parents. It's not as prevalent as it may seem to have casual, intimate encounters. 29% of adults aged 18 to 29 have had a one-night stand, 15% have hooked up with several people at once, and 13% have had an intimate encounter with a coworker. Although most casual flings are initiated in person, technology is becoming more and more prevalent in people's intimate behavior. Adults ages 18 to 29 who have had a casual fling met in person 93% of the time and online 48% of the time. It's interesting to note that 20% of guys between the ages of 18 and 29 dated someone they met at church. Young adults are more at ease with digital sharing than their marginally older colleagues. 22% of adults between the ages of 18 and 29 and 16% of adults between the ages of 30 and 49 have shared a naked photo with someone, respectively. However, they frequently move in with a partner when they first move out, which for most is around age 24. Only 13% of persons aged 25 to 29 claim they've never been in a committed relationship. Apps have resulted in meaningful relationships for some people, as well as brief flings for others. 30% of men and 23% of women who are adults aged 18 to 29 who have used dating or hookup apps have had casual flings. 19% of males and 10% of women were fortunate enough to find committed relationships. In the past 10 years, the percentage of 18 to 29-year-olds reporting no intimacy in the previous year has more than doubled. According to research reported in the Washington Post, the percentage of men under 30 in the USA who aren't having intimate encounters nearly tripled between 2008 and 2018. Approximately 10% of men under the age of 20 reported not having intimate encounters in the 12 months prior in 2008, significantly more men than women. For men under 30, this figure has increased by over 3 times in the last 10 years, reaching 28%, whereas for women under 30, the increase has been less than 10%. The paper pointed out that this may not be entirely accurate because of the manner the data was reported. They could have had intimate encounters before turning 18 or only slept with other guys. It also revealed that the number of young men who report being virgins has tripled since 2008. According to research from January, fewer American high school students are engaging in intimate activity. Compared to 47% in 2005 and 53% in 1995, it was discovered that just 41% of students in grades 9 through 12 had engaged in intimate activity. As per another study, the number of young people who abstain is rising. Up from 22% in 2002, no less than 27% of men aged 15 to 24 have never engaged in any kind of intimate activity. In contrast, 29% of women in that age range had never had any intimate encounters, up from 22% when the previous study was conducted. Teenagers aged 15 to 19 showed the greatest increase in virginity. But eventually, they'll take the risk. Nearly everyone between the ages of 25 and 44 has had intimate encounters, according to the survey. In that range, 98% of women and 97% of men have engaged in physical encounters from the front, 89% of women and 90% of men have engaged in oral encounters with someone of the opposite gender, and 36% of women and 44% of men have engaged in physical encounters from the backside. Women with college degrees are less likely to report same-gender activity than women from other educational backgrounds. Higher educated guys engage in more same-gender activity when it comes to men. And for women, those with less education reported the highest level of same-gender activity. So essentially what this means is the more educated a woman is, she's more likely to be interested in men. But the more educated a guy is, he is more likely to be more interested in other guys. Debunking the 80/20 myth. But even if the GS data are accurate, we can still consider if another aspect of the incel story is real. Do a select few Chads and Jennifers truly control the physical intimacy market? Many RP coaches use the adage that 80% of the physical relations is between 20% of the guys. Is this a fact? In fact, the response is negative. Naturally, it isn't. Just think about how many intimate encounters 20% of males would be engaging in. For that kind of percentage to be maintained, a sizable portion would need to be performed 2-a-days on a regular basis. In reality, the top 20% of active young males who have never been married control around 50 to 60% of the intimacy market, according to the GSS. For women, it's roughly the same, and these shares essentially remain constant over time. The top 20% of the most promiscuous males account for nearly 60% of male intimate encounters when the number of partners is measured rather than intimate frequency. This pattern is, once more, remarkably constant through time. Chads and Stacys, Tinder or Bumble. Changes in women's attitudes about partnerships or even a new battle between the genders are not the main causes of the surge in young male abstinence. It primarily has to do with people spending longer in school and longer at home. However, that story isn't really about a shift in intimacy politics. Rather, it's about the new information economy and, to some extent, skyrocketing housing costs. As a result, it comes as no surprise that lack of intimacy is on the rise throughout a number of nations. This implies that it might be harder to come up with a solution to help young people form pairs. Although more educated people do eventually tend to get married, men and women are far less likely to get married while in school and throughout time. In many nations, more years of schooling are linked to marriage occurring at a later age. Therefore, marriage is postponed as more education is needed to obtain a solidly middle-class job, leaving more young people lonely. Who would have thought we would see this happen around us? Thanks for watching Man Reacts. Show us your love and support by liking this video, sharing it with your friends, and subscribing to the channel. And let us know your thoughts on this in the comments. We're always up for a healthy debate and discussion.